I'm going to talk about Mary and Martha tonight in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. How many of you in here have a sister or sisters? Well, not everybody. Jen, did you raise your hand? I know you've got it. Oh, she sure did. Linda, I don't know about that. Well, I have three sisters. I'm the oldest of three sisters and three brothers. So I had to help my mother change a lot of diapers and do a lot of tending to babies and all that stuff that the oldest child gets to do. Do you think the same way your sister thinks? I know I don't. Whether it's good or bad, I don't. Oh, Brian's sister's not even in here, so you can't. You can. Oh, oh. Are you and your sister alike or opposites? I'm opposite too. Not that that's good or bad. We. Oh. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna read every place I found Mary and Martha in the Bible, and that's only 3 places. But one chapter's super long, and I'm not going to read the whole thing because when I'm standing up here in front of y'all, my throat gets awfully dry, and I don't get enough spit to swallow. So, okay. Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42 says, "Now it happened as they went that he entered the certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she approached him and said, 'Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone?'" Have you been there? Those of you who have sisters or brothers, I've been there. "Therefore, tell her to help me." And Jesus answered and said to her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken from her." Next, turn your Bibles to John chapter 11. Fast, and we're not going to read the whole chapter. John chapter 11, verses 1 and 2 says, "Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. And it was that Mary who anointed the Lord with fragrant oil and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore the sisters sent to him, saying, 'Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick.'" And then skip down to verses 5 and 6, and it says, "Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days in a place where he was." And then let's go down to verses 20 through 22. "Now Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary was sitting in the house. Now Martha said to Jesus, 'Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you.'" And then verse 32 says, I'm coming to it. "Then when Mary came where Jesus was, she saw him. She fell at his feet, saying to him, 'Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.'" And then John chapter 12, verses 1 through 3 says, "Then 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, who had been dead, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. There they made him a supper, and Martha served. But Lazarus was one of those who sat at the table with him. Then Mary took a pound of very costly oil of spikenard, whatever it is, it cost a bunch, anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. Tonight we're going to look at the story about Mary and Martha in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. Mary and Martha had a brother named Lazarus. He's not mentioned in the Bible till you get to John chapter 11. The sisters and their brother Lazarus lived in a small village of Bethany. Bethany was about 2 miles from Jerusalem and a little southeast of the Mount of Olives. In Luke 10, Jesus and his disciples went to Bethany, and Martha invited them to stay at her house. Some scholars think that Martha owned the house. Others just didn't know. It's possible that Mary, Martha, and Lazarus were a family of financial means. Because now think about it. They lived in a house, 3 people lived in it. Then they invited Jesus, that made 4 people. And then 12 disciples on top of that. How many is that? 16? And let's see, 3, 4, and 12. 16 people so far. Now my house wouldn't hold 16 people to sleep in. But evidently theirs did. And it was big enough that she could serve them a meal. She served all of them a big meal, and so she had to buy the big meal and prepare the big meal. And then in John's gospel, Mary poured fragrant oil, which was very costly, on Jesus' feet. So it kind of leads you to believe that they had some money, doesn't it? The Bible doesn't say anything about their financial status, but I think they lived comfortably. Jesus and these 3 siblings were close friends. He loved them, and they loved him. But now we have some contrasting responses to the visit that Jesus made. Martha, often seen as the practical caretaker, welcomes Jesus into her home. Her actions reflect the values of hospitality. This was who Martha was. She liked to entertain people. She liked to have people at her house. That's me. I'm a Martha for sure. But that's just how Martha was. She was a good Jewish woman, and she spent her time in the kitchen doing what good Jewish women do. Prepare meals, clean the house, do all that. Jason, you can take that down for right now. Please, thank you. She sets about preparing her house, the meal, and everything needed for her honored guest. Meanwhile, guess what her sister Mary was doing? Sitting. She chose a different path. Rather than assisting with the chores, she sat at the feet of Jesus, absorbing his words and his teaching. She took notes because she was so engrossed with what he was saying. She wanted to remember everything. So she was sitting at his feet, and I can just imagine she had her feather pen and her scroll, and she started taking notes. Everything Jesus said. Let's see. He said, I must love my neighbor, love my enemy as Christ loved me. If I want to be forgiven, I have to forgive. Even people that have hurt me, I have to forgive them. That's what he said. And then she writes down, I am to be the light of the world in this dark world. I have to be a light. And then she said, then the teacher said, I need to go make disciples. Got to do that. I am to be a cheerful and a generous giver. She wrote that down. I am to trust him and not fear. She took a lot of notes. In biblical times, It was customary for women to do the work in the kitchen and for men to sit in front of the teacher. It was unheard of that a woman would sit at the feet of a teacher. The men had to learn it, and then if they wanted the woman to learn, he had to go teach her at the house. And that's how they did it. I'm so thankful that we can learn for ourselves now. So Martha was working in the kitchen, preparing the meal, and that's typical of what was expected of a Jewish woman in that day and time. Mary sitting with the men at the feet of Jesus was simply unheard of. Martha's reaction to one of bustling activities. An honored guest, a close friend, is coming to her house. If that was me, and well, I get kind of anxious every other Tuesday when my Bible study friends come over. I want everything perfect, and I want the house all cleaned. I want the food all fixed and all that stuff. And that's how Martha was. So I'm definitely a Martha. But she had a lot to do, a whole lot to do. He was bringing at least 12 other guests. That added more pressure to this kind woman. And she had so much to do. She had to go to the store, buy the extra food, buy all the goods, supplies. She had to change the sheets on the bed. She had to make sure the outhouse was cleaned and fully stocked. She had to chop the veggies, cook the meat, cook the chicken. And she couldn't just run down to her local Kroger store and get an already dead chicken. What do you say? You don't say already dead chicken. Already cooked. They're already dead. She couldn't do that. She had to go in the backyard, and she had to chase a chicken. And then she had to, I used to see my mother do it like that. Wring its neck, yeah. And then she had to stick them in really hot water. I don't know if that's how you still do it or not, but she stuck them in hot water, and because I was always in the house taking care of the younger kids. And she always had Carlotta and Donna out there helping her with the chickens. Anyway, Donna, one time, Mother was telling her she had to cut the chicken up. She said, Mama, I don't want to touch that old chicken. And she said, get in there and cut that chicken up like I told you to while I finish killing these. And she went in the house to the kitchen sink, and she started cutting up that chicken, and she swears that chicken clucked at her. And she threw the chicken down and went outside, and Mother said, what are you doing out here? She said, I ain't cutting up that chicken. It clucked at me. And so when Mother got through, she went to the kitchen, and she said, come here, Donna Romaine. You're going to cut this chicken up. And Donna went over there. She said, Mama, I don't want to touch that chicken. And Mother said, touch that chicken. Now cut right here. And Donna started cutting. She said, it clucked. And she threw that chicken down and ran out of the house. And I don't know if she ever learned how to cut up a chicken or not. Yeah. She gets the already dead ones. But she had so much work to do and received no help from her sister. The Bible said she was distracted and with much serving. Her actions, though motivated by love and respect, became a source of frustration and chaos. Mary, sitting quietly, seemingly ignoring the demands of hospitality. I got to admit, that would make me aggravated too, especially when it's a woman's work to be in the kitchen working instead of in the living room listening. She was unable to contain her emotions, so she went to Jesus and she said, Lord, do you not care that I'm having to do all this work by myself? Tell her to help me. tell her to get up and get in the kitchen and help me. Well, have you ever thought about approaching Jesus that way with an attitude? She had an attitude that day, didn't she? She said, Lord, don't you care? And tell her to get up. Well, I think we ought to tell Jesus what we need and what we want, but you don't need to do it with an attitude, because guess what? I don't think it'll work when you tell him what to do with when you've got an attitude. But one lesson you could learn, and that's another day's lesson, she prayed with expectation. She expected Jesus to do something, didn't she? So it's a lesson we can learn. But let's not slam Martha just yet. Remember, they're having the Messiah over for dinner. If I was having God over for dinner, I'd be an absolute nervous wreck. And I'm sure Martha was too. She probably said, I've got a great deviled ham recipe I could serve him, but I can't serve God deviled ham. And so there goes my deviled egg recipe, and I sure can't fix him a devil's food cake, can I? Why, the name alone would insult the disciples and Jesus, so you can't serve them anything deviled. So Martha pulled out her Saintly Selections cookbook, and she started thumbing through it to see what she could find. And here's the first recipe she found. It's called Died and Gone to Heaven Coconut Pie. Yum. Doesn't that sound good? She said, well, I can fix that for the teacher and his disciples. Then she kept thumbing through her cookbook, and she said, oh, Uncle Abraham and Aunt Sarah, she gave me this recipe for angel hash. It's a fruit salad. I could fix that for the disciples and Jesus. And she turned a few more pages, and she says, there's Cousin Esther's angelic eggs. So she can do eggs. Then she thumbs some more. Oh, there's my recipe for angel hair pasta. Now, I can fix that for Jesus and his disciples. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And then, I made this one up, y'all, but stepping on the clouds, biscuits and gravy. She thought that would be really good for the teacher and his disciples. So that's what she decided to fix that day. I think that died and gone to heaven coconut pie would be wonderful right now. But Jesus responded to Martha with gentle wisdom. And he said, Martha, Martha, you're worried and troubled about many things, but only one thing is necessary, and Mary has chosen the better. Well, that'd probably make me even madder, but she must have listened to Jesus because she changed her ways. But saying a person's name twice, I think Brian has said this in his sermons before, it draws the person closer to God. And because when Abraham was getting ready to sacrifice Isaac, he said, Abraham, Abraham, don't sacrifice your son Isaac. But he said it twice. When Moses saw the burning bush, he said, Moses, Moses, take off your sandals because you're on holy ground. So he said, Martha, Martha. But I can just imagine him cupping her face in his hands, cupping her little face in his hands, and saying, Martha, Martha. Mary's chosen what's better of the two. And you're just worried over stuff that you don't need to be worried about. I'd be worried when I'm just a Martha. I would be worried if I was serving Jesus. Anyway, he said, Martha, you're worried about many things. I found a quote by Pastor Skip Heitzig, I think is how you say his name. Is that how you say it? Okay. He said, works without worship produces worry. And action without adoration leads to aggravation. I'm going to read that again, okay? Works without worship produces worry. Action without adoration leads to aggravation. So you got to have worship, and you got to have adoration. You've got to spend time with the Lord, or your works ain't going to work very well, are they? Jesus told Martha that Mary chose what was better. It wasn't a matter of right or wrong, but a matter of priority. What Martha was doing was not bad, was it? Cooking for the teacher and his disciples, that's a good thing. Cooking for the Bible study ladies on Tuesdays is a good thing. But if you don't spend time in the presence of Jesus first, it's probably going to flop. Not going to be what it's intended to be. It was fine for Martha to do what she was doing, but it was too much. She was missing an opportunity to sit at the feet of Jesus. Mary had chosen what was better. Jason, can you put that little chart up now? There's a chart in your questions, and it says, there's 2 columns there. We're going to talk about what Mary was and what Martha was, the opposites of each other. Mary was a woman of adoration. A woman of adoration. While Martha was a woman of action. She had to be busy and doing something. Mary was a worshiper. Martha was a worker. Mary was sitting at the feet of Jesus. Martha was standing in the kitchen working. Am I going too fast? Mary hears the teachings of Jesus. Martha helps by serving others. Mary encountered Jesus in the living room. Martha was encumbered in the kitchen. Encumbered. I had to have an E word. That's the best one I could come up with. And then this one was found in John chapter 11. Mary had faith that Jesus could have healed Lazarus before he died. But Martha had faith that even now he would raise Lazarus from the dead. See the contrast there? Let me go over them one more time. Mary was a woman of adoration. She was a worshiper. Martha was a woman of action. Mary was a worshiper. Martha was a worker. Mary was sitting at the feet of Jesus. Martha was standing in the kitchen working. Mary hears the teachings of Jesus. Martha helps by serving others. Mary encountered Jesus in the living room, and Martha encumbered in the kitchen. Mary had faith that Jesus could have healed Lazarus before he died. But Martha had faith that even now he would raise Lazarus from the dead. That's a lot of faith, isn't it? Both women were doing good, weren't they? Is there anything wrong with what Martha did? No, but she did too much of it, and she got a bad attitude, didn't she? And she blamed Mary. She blamed Mary for just sitting there. I would too. But that's because I'm a Martha. If I'm up working, I want everybody up working, don't you? Yeah. Jason knows. He lives with me. Martha served God by serving others. And that's what we do. We serve God by serving others. Mary truly worshiped Jesus. And we've got to follow Mary's example. And I'm going to give you some scriptures now, and I think it's in your questions. But John 4:24 tells us that we must worship God in spirit and truth. That's John 4:24. We must worship God in spirit and truth. And that's what Mary was doing. Psalm 95:6 calls us to worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. That's Psalm 95:6. Calls us to worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. Psalm 150 verse 6 says, Let everything that has breath praise the Lord. We do that in our singing, don't we? Worship service. Matthew 11:29 says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn of me." Martha was busy doing good works, and we are commanded to do the same thing. We're commanded to do good works. Ephesians 2:10 tells us we are created for good works. And 1 Timothy 6:17 and 18 says to be rich in good deeds. Is everybody caught up? I'm not going too fast. Titus 3:8 in the NIV and the NLT says to devote yourself to doing what is good. Devote yourself to doing what is good. In Hebrews 10:24 in the NIV says to spur one another on to good deeds. What would good works be? Just tell me something that would be good. Feeding the hungry. Feeding the hungry is what Martha did, wasn't it? She gave them a place to sleep, too. Okay, there's got to be... I've always wondered about this because Jesus said Mary chose the better. But I know I'm a Martha, and so I always thought I was wrong because Martha seems to get the short end of the deal here, and she gets fussed at a lot in sermons and everything. So I think I figured it out, though. Balance of worship and good works. That's what we've got to have. We've got to have some balance there because they're both good. Worship is good and good works is good, and we're commanded to do both. But balance is hard because we live in a busy world. There's always something to do. If you are involved in any type of ministry, it may seem like sometimes you're at church every night. I know when my kids were little and Larry was the Christian education director for the state of Arkansas. So every night we just gone to church somewhere, and I picked the kids up at school one day. Matthew got in the car and he said, "Mom, where are we going to church tonight?" And I felt so sorry for that little kid because that's all he knew. Going to church again tonight. Where am I going tonight? And so you can do too much of that good stuff too. I mean, that stuff. But the first thing we have to do, and this is in your questions, is we have to prioritize. Always put sitting at Jesus' feet first. Sit at his feet first. You know, if you make a to-do list and you'll never get everything done on it if you put Jesus at the end of the list. You'll never get to him. You just won't do it because you'll be too tired, you'll be too sleepy. You just run out of 24 hours a day and you can't get everything done. So it's important that we set aside time every day to sit at Jesus' feet. That's absolutely the truth. It is. And I found, too, if you don't put him first, your day goes pretty quick. It goes downhill pretty quick. But if you put him first, get up earlier. Do whatever you have to do to put him first. Start your day off with Jesus. So make sure that time with Jesus is prioritized, even if it's not equal time, but it's prioritized. Make time for your devotions every day. Did you know going to church is sitting at Jesus' feet? Praying is sitting at Jesus' feet. Reading your Bible is sitting at Jesus' feet. Just being in his presence is sitting at his feet. Going to Bible study is sitting at Jesus' feet. Going to discipleship classes, that's sitting at Jesus' feet. So we need to put first things first, always. And the second thing we can do to balance worship and good works is keep your mind on God. Isaiah 26:3 says, "You keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you." because he trusts in you. True balance comes from keeping your minds and hearts on God. As you go through your day and you're working and doing this and that and the other, keep your mind on Jesus. We must focus on him instead of our stress. I got more laundry I got to do. I don't want to do more laundry. It seems like it's never done. You get all the laundry done, and Saturday night, it's all dirty clothes in the basket again. But you know what? You can thank God that you had clothes and that you got to wear them. And a washer and dryer. What if you had to wash them on that washboard thing? That'd be rough. Take them down and lug them down to the river. That'd be awful. So we need to thank God for what we've got, and that we are able to wash our clothes and wash our dishes and clean our house and wash our windows. I know in 98, April of 98, a big tornado hit Fort Smith, Arkansas, which is right, it's where I worked, where Larry worked. And we slept through it. I mean, it came through Van Buren too, but I didn't know anything about it till the next morning. They called and said, you don't have to go to work today. And I said, why? Because all of downtown Fort Smith is pretty much gone. I said, why? They said, we had a tornado. Oh, I didn't know that. So I told the kids, you don't have to go to school today, so guess what we're going to do? And they said, what? I said, we're going to wash windows. That went over like a lead balloon. And they said, they got mad. Why do we have to wash windows on a day that we're out of school? Why can't we just be playing? I said, you be thankful you have windows to wash today, because a lot of people don't have windows today. They don't even have a house today. So be thankful for what we got. They didn't like it, but they did it anyway because I was the mama, and I said, do what? It sounded good, yeah. So keep your mind off your stress and be thankful for what you've got, because he gives us perfect peace. Seek God in everything. Balance is not about time management. It's about putting God first. So start your day with prayer and give your day to him. And then the next one is work as worship, but know when to step away. That might be a hard one. God wants us to work with excellence, but not to the point of exhaustion. Have you been there? I'm sure Brian has. But when you just keep working and keep working and keep working, and then you've got to get away and get some rest. We all do. That's why we have vacations. Even Jesus stepped away and got the rest that he needed. And then the last one, to prioritize or balance your worship and good works, is to honor the Sabbath. Rest is a command. It's not optional. And I'll admit, Sundays, I have found myself doing work that I probably shouldn't, that we didn't used to do when I was a kid growing up. We never did any laundry on Sunday. We never went to the grocery store on Sunday because they closed at 6 o'clock on Saturday night. But we didn't shop on Sunday. We didn't do laundry on Sunday. You didn't do any work at all on Sunday because that's the Lord's day. But I've kind of slipped up there. I got to get better about that. Neither Mary or Martha were wrong. Martha chose to sit while Mary chose to sit while Martha stood. And I know from experience that sitting is a whole lot easier than standing. If you sit at Jesus' feet today, you can stand in a time of trial tomorrow. And that same pastor, Skip Heitzig, said that too. If you sit at Jesus' feet today, you can stand in the time of trial tomorrow. Spending time with Jesus is vitally important. Jesus told Martha that Mary had chosen what is better. But he didn't tell Martha to quit being hospitable, did he? He didn't. In John 12, Jesus was at Bethany again, and he was eating at Mary's and Martha's and Lazarus' house. And guess what Martha was doing? It told us in verse 2, chapter 12. Martha served. That's what she's supposed to do. That was her nature. But I think she learned something. during that time. Martha became, what was the difference in Luke 10 where Martha was serving and in John chapter 12 where Martha served? There was a difference in Martha. I think, this is just what my feeble brain came up with, I think Martha was mad in Luke 10 and she was aggravated with Mary. And I think she learned to put Jesus first by John chapter 12. And she served, and I bet she had a smile on her face. And I bet, well, in the same chapter, that's where Mary poured the perfume out on Jesus. I think she was frustrated with all the chores to be done in chapter 10 of Luke, in Luke chapter 10, and she complained about her good works. She complained about it. Have you ever seen a Christian complaining about all the work they have to do at church? Yeah, we all have. But in John chapter 12, she served again, but Scripture didn't say she complained. She was doing a good work for the Lord with excellence, without complaining. I think she learned to prioritize spending time with Jesus, don't you? In her book, Having a Mary Heart in a Martha's World, has anybody read that? Having a Mary Heart in a Martha World? It's an old book. Not that I'm old, but I've read it. Joanna Weaver wrote the book, and she said, the living room intimacy Mary enjoyed with Jesus will never come out of the busyness in Martha's kitchen. Let me read that again. The living room intimacy Mary enjoyed with Jesus will never come out of the busyness in Martha's kitchen. It won't be the same. Mary's experience turned into a deeper relationship with Jesus. Martha's busyness turned into frustration and chaos. And she fussed at Jesus. Tell Mary to get in here and help me. In Martha's eagerness to serve Jesus, she lost an opportunity to know Jesus. Oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be so busy doing good works that I miss knowing Jesus. I want to spend time with him. And that's what we've got to do so we can grow in him. Okay? I've said it many times here tonight. I'm a Martha. And I got to admit, there's some mornings I get up and I say, Lord, I want to be married today. I just want to sit at your feet and bask in your love and just worship you all day long. I just want to spend that time with you, Lord. And then I add, but would you invite Martha to come over and clean my house for me? And would you tell me when she's coming so I can straighten it up, because she don't need to see my house like this.